Qur'an chapter 51, Surah Adh-Dhariyat. By Sayyid Qutb. Translation by Muhammad Al-Amrani. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. By the winds that scatter, scattering, and those that bear the heavy burden of rain, and those that flow with ease upon the seas, and those angels who apportion each matter, verily, that which you are promised is true, and indeed the day of judgment will surely come to pass. By the heaven full of paths and beauty, indeed you are in differing speech. Turned away from it is he who is destined to be turned away. Perish the conjecturers, those who are in a flood of confusion, heedless, asking, when is the day of recompense? It is the day they will be tormented over the fire, and will be told, taste your torment. This is what you are impatient for. Indeed, the righteous will be amid gardens and springs, receiving what their sustainer has given them. Indeed, they were before that doers of good. They used to sleep but little of the night, and in the hours before dawn they would seek forgiveness, and in their wealth was a right for the beggar and the deprived. And on the earth are signs for those of certainty, and in yourselves. Then will you not see, and in the heaven is your provision, and what you are promised. Then by the sustainer of the heaven and the earth indeed it is truth, just as certain as your speaking. Has there reached you the story of the honoured guests of Abraham? When they entered upon him and said, we greet you with peace, he answered, and upon you peace, you are a people unknown. Then he went to his family, and came with a fat roasted calf, and placed it near them. He said, will you not eat? And he felt from them apprehension. They said, fear not, and gave him good tidings of a learned boy. And his wife approached with a cry of alarm, and struck her face, and said, I am a barren old woman. They said, thus has said your sustainer, indeed he is the wise, the knowing. Abraham said, then what is your business here, O messengers? They said, indeed, we have been sent to a people of criminals to send down upon them stones of clay, marked in the presence of your sustainer for those who exceed the limits. So we brought out whoever was in the city of the believers, but we found not within them other than a single house of Muslims, and we left therein a sign for those who fear the painful punishment. And in Moses was a sign, when we sent him to Pharaoh with clear authority. But he turned away with his supporters and said, he is a magician or a madman. So we took him and his soldiers and cast them into the sea, and he was blameworthy. And in the story of Ad was a sign, when we sent against them the barren wind. It left nothing of what it came upon, but that it made it like disintegrated ruins. And in the story of Thamud, when it was said to them, enjoy yourselves for a time. But they were insolent toward the command of their sustainer, so the thunderbolt seized them while they were looking on. And they were unable to arise, nor could they defend themselves, and we destroyed the people of Noah before. Indeed, they were a people defiantly disobedient. And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander. And the earth we have spread out, and excellent is the preparer. And of all things we created two pairs, that you might remember the greatness of God. So flee to God. Indeed, I am to you from him a clear warner. And do not make as equal with God another deity. Indeed, I am to you from him a clear warner. Similarly, there came not to those before them any messenger, except that they said, a magician or a madman. Did they suggest it to them? Rather, they themselves are a transgressing people. So turn away from them, for you are not to be blamed, and remind, for indeed the reminder benefits the believers. And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. I do not want from them any provision, nor do I want them to feed me. Indeed, it is God who is the continual provider, the firm possessor of strength. And indeed, for those who have wronged is a portion of punishment like the portion of their companions. So let them not impatiently urge me. And woe to those who have disbelieved from their day, which they are promised. This surah has a unique atmosphere. It begins by mentioning four forces of God's command in a cryptic, mysterious manner, which immediately impresses upon the mind that one is faced with matters of profound mystery. By the winds that scatter, scattering, by those that bear the burden, by those that flow with ease, by those who apportion the matter. Verily, that which you are promised is true, and indeed the day of judgment is certain. The terms the winds, the bearers, the floaters, and the apportioners are not commonly understood and remain vague, prompting inquiry and reflection. This very vagueness seems to be the initial purpose, creating an atmosphere of awe and reverence in the mind. No sooner does the first oath conclude than it is followed by another. By the heaven full of paths. God swears by the heaven, emphasizing that one is indeed in differing speech, confused, unstable and fluctuating in opinions, based on conjectures and suppositions, not on knowledge and certainty. This surah, with its opening and its entirety, seeks to achieve a clear goal, to connect the human heart to the heavens, to tether it to the unseen mysteries of God, and to free it from the shackles of the earth, allowing it to soar unimpeded toward the worship of God, answering his call, so flee to God. It aims to fulfill his purpose. And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. Because preoccupation with sustenance and the unknown future is one of the heaviest burdens on the human heart, the surah takes special care to liberate the mind from these concerns and to reassure the soul. It repeatedly directs attention to the heavens, reminding the listener that provision comes from there, not from the earth and its immediate causes. This is mentioned directly, such as in the verse, "And in the heaven is your provision and what you are promised," and indirectly when describing the righteous servants of God and their relationship with wealth. And in their wealth was a right for the beggar and the deprived. The surah also illustrates the generosity of Abraham, who, upon receiving his guests, who were actually angels, offers them a fat calf in haste, even though he had just met them. This demonstrates a heart free from earthly attachments and worries about sustenance, a heart that soars toward the heavens, yearning for its creator without any hindrance. Thus, the primary theme of the surah, with all its topics and discussions, revolves around freeing the heart from the bonds of the earth and lifting it from the chains of sustenance, connecting it to the heavens in its entirety, allowing it to soar toward God. This is why the surah opens as it does, creating an atmosphere of mystery, followed by an oath by the heavens and repeated references to the heavens. The righteous are depicted at the beginning of the surah as being in gardens and springs, receiving what they have earned from their sustainer. They are described as those who sleep little at night, who seek forgiveness at dawn, and who consider the wealth in their possession as having a rightful share for the beggar and the deprived. This image paints a picture of devotion to God, standing in worship at night, turning to him before dawn and being generous with wealth, viewing it as a means to support others, thereby freeing the heart from its pressure and attachment. The surah then calls attention to the signs of God on the earth and in the self, while constantly linking the human heart to the heavens and its provisions. And on the earth are signs for those of certainty. And in yourselves, then will you not see, and in the heaven is your provision and what you are promised. Finally, the surah concludes with a powerful rhythm. And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. I do not want from them any provision, nor do I want them to feed me. Indeed, it is God who is the continual provider, the firm possessor of strength. This is a single continuous rhythm with many varied notes, yet all come together to form a harmonious melody, calling the human heart toward the heavens. In it, there are quick references to the stories of Abraham, Lot, Moses, Ad, Thamud, and the people of Noah. In the mention of Abraham, there is a glimpse into the matter of wealth, as well as a hint of the unseen in the glad tidings of a learned boy granted to Abraham and his wife despite their old age and barrenness. In the remaining stories, there is a reaffirmation of God's promise, which he swore to at the beginning of the surah. Verily, that which you are promised is true. This is also referenced at the end as a warning to the disbelievers. For those who have wronged is a portion of punishment, like the portion of their companions, so let them not impatiently urge me. The stories in this surah are thus closely tied to its primary theme, freeing the heart for the worship of God, liberating it from all impediments, and connecting it to the heavens through faith and certainty. The stories are not mere historical accounts, but are interwoven with the surah's main purpose, to detach the heart from earthly concerns and allow it to ascend toward the divine. The opening verses, by the winds that scatter, scattering, by those that bear the burden, by those that flow with ease, by those who apportion the matter, cast an aura of mystery, evoking a sense of awe that prepares the heart to reflect on matters of great importance. Even in the early days, many sought to understand the meaning behind these terms. Ibn Kathir relates that Shuba ibn al-Hajjaj, narrating from Samak ibn Harb, who narrated from Khalid ibn Arara, said that he heard Ali, may God be pleased with him, explaining these verses on the pulpit of Kufa. Ali said that the scattering winds refer to the wind, the bearers of burdens refer to the clouds, the floaters with ease refer to the ships, and the apportioners of affairs refer to the angels. This explanation was later confirmed by other companions, including Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, Mujahid, Sayyid ibn Jubayr, and others as mentioned by Ibn Jarir and Ibn Abi Hatim. God swears by the wind that scatters dust, pollen and clouds, by the clouds that bear the burden of rain, by the ships that sail with ease upon the seas, and by the angels who apportion God's commands, distributing them according to his will. These elements, the wind, the clouds, the ships, and the angels, are all creations of God, instruments of his power, and veils of his decree, through which his will is enacted in the world. By swearing upon these creations, God draws attention to their significance and invites reflection on the divine hand that creates, sustains, and governs them. This reflection instills awe and reverence in the heart, reminding the believer of the truth of God's promises and the inevitability of judgment. The second oath, by the heaven full of paths, directs attention toward the heavens, which are intricately woven and structured like a finely crafted tapestry. This may refer to the clouds that spread across the sky, or perhaps to the celestial bodies and orbits that are interwoven in a grand cosmic design. He swears by the well-arranged heaven, woven in perfect harmony, that indeed they are in a contradictory and confused discourse, one without any steadfastness or coherence, without any foundation or stability. Those who are destined to be turned away from it are turned away, and those who remain within it remain. There is no stability in their words, no agreement, no firmness. Rather, confusion and unease persist, and so it is with falsehood. It is always a shifting, trembling ground, a wasteland without landmarks or light. It sways, never resting upon a firm foundation, never measured by a precise balance. Even those who adhere to it do so only to disperse and scatter after a short while, as discord and division creep among them, revealing their confusion and disagreement, and the chaotic state they are in becomes all the more apparent when viewed beneath the sky, perfectly woven and harmoniously structured. Then the discourse transitions to affirm that they live in mere illusions and conjectures regarding the matter of the hereafter, relying neither on truth nor certainty. They are in a state of differing speech regarding this manifest truth. The Surah then paints for them a vivid scene of that day, a scene that the eyes can almost behold. Perish the conjecturers, those who are in a flood of heedlessness. They ask, when is the day of recompense? It is the day they will be tormented over the fire. And it will be said, taste your torment. This is what you were hastening towards. Conjecture, ulkas, refers to mere assumption and baseless estimation, something not weighed by a precise balance. And God, the most exalted, calls for their destruction, and what a terrifying call that is. God's invocation of destruction upon them is, in effect, a decree of their doom. Perish the conjecturers. Their condition is further clarified, those who are in a flood of heedlessness. They are immersed in delusions and fantasies, unable to awaken or become aware. The expression casts a particular shadow, depicting them as submerged, heedless, utterly unaware of what surrounds them, as if they were drunken and dazed. This is because they fail to perceive the clear truth, which every conscious mind, unclouded by delusion, can recognize and be certain of. Instead, they ask sarcastically and mockingly, when is the day of recompense? They ask not out of a desire for knowledge or understanding, but out of denial and rejection, and with a sense of incredulity regarding its occurrence as conveyed by the word when, yn. Thus, they are swiftly confronted with a scene of themselves on that very day that they had deemed far-fetched and impossible. On that day, they will be tormented by the fire. As metal is burned to distinguish its true nature, it is the day they will be tormented over the fire. With that comes the painful rebuke in the midst of their severe torment. Taste your torment. This is what you are hastening toward. Such severity is the appropriate response to their mockery and heedlessness. The harshness of the scene is the fitting counterpart to the oblivion and negligence in which the conjecturers lived. It is the fulfillment of God's decree of destruction upon them in its most intense and severe form, on the day when they will be tormented by the fire. On the opposite shore, in stark contrast, another scene is painted for a different group of people, a group who are certain and do not speculate, who are devout and do not boast, who are awake and worshipful, seeking forgiveness, and who do not spend their lives in heedlessness and oblivion. Indeed, the righteous will be amid gardens and springs, receiving what their sustainer has given them, for indeed, they were before that doers of good. They used to sleep but little of the night, and in the hours before dawn they would seek forgiveness, and in their wealth was a right for the beggar and the deprived. This is the group of the God-conscious, the wakeful, those with heightened sensitivity to God's watch over them and their own watchfulness over themselves. They are in gardens and springs, receiving what their sustainer has bestowed upon them out of his grace and generosity, as a reward for what they had previously offered in this worldly life, worshipping God as if they could see him, and with the certainty that he sees them. Indeed, they were before that doers of good. Their goodness and devotion are portrayed in a humble, delicate, and sensitive manner. They used to sleep but little of the night, and in the hours before dawn they would seek forgiveness. They are the wakeful ones during the depths of the night, while others are asleep. They turn to their sustainer in supplication and repentance, seeking his forgiveness and mercy. They taste only a little of sleep, and only rest for a short while during the night. They find comfort in their sustainer during the stillness of the night, and so their sides shun their beds, and their aspirations lighten them so that sleep does not weigh them down. Al-Hasan al-Basri said about the verse, "They used to sleep but little of the night, that they persevered in standing for prayer during the night, so they would only rest for a small portion of it, and they would strive until the time of dawn, when they would seek forgiveness in the last hours of the night." Qatada narrated that Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais used to say, "They used to sleep but little of the night," meaning they would sleep very little, and then he would say, "I do not consider myself among the people of this verse." Al-Hasan al-Basri also narrated that Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais used to say, "I compared my deeds with the deeds of the people of paradise, and I found that they have far surpassed us, for they are a people who sleep but little of the night, and I compared my deeds with the deeds of the people of hellfire, and I found that they are a people with no good in them, who deny the book of God and the messengers of God, and who deny the resurrection after death. So I found that the best among us are those who mix righteous deeds with others that are not so." And Abd al-Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam narrated that a man from Banu Tamim said to his father, "O Abu Usama, this description is one I do not find in ourselves. God mentions a people saying, 'They used to sleep but little of the night, while we by God sleep through most of the night and rarely rise.' To which his father responded, 'Blessed is he who sleeps when drowsy and fears God when awake.' This is the state to which men from the second generation aspired, men of high rank in faith and certainty, and yet they found themselves far from it. God had chosen certain people for this state, guiding them toward fulfilling its rights, and he recorded them among those who excel in goodness. Such is the nature of their relationship with their sustainer. As for their relationship with others and their relationship with wealth, it is one befitting those who excel in righteousness, and in their wealth was a right for the beggar and the deprived. They allocate a share for the beggar who asks and is given, and a share for the deprived who refrains from asking out of modesty and is therefore deprived. They consider the share of both as a mandatory right in their wealth, willingly imposing this obligation upon themselves without any fixed limit. This notion aligns with the Surah's treatment of the themes of sustenance and wealth, aiming to free the heart from the shackles of greed, the weight of stinginess, and the distractions of worldly provision. It also serves to pave the way for the next section of the Surah, while completing the portrayal of the God-conscious and the righteous. And on the earth are signs for those of certainty, and in yourselves. Then will you not see, and in the heaven is your provision, and what you are promised. Then by the sustainer of the heaven and the earth, indeed, it is truth, just as certain as your speaking. Here, attention is drawn to the signs of God in the earth and within the self, and a direction toward the heavens in the matter of provision, which is ordained and apportioned. This section concludes with a tremendous oath as God, exalted is He, swears by Himself described as the sustainer of the heaven and the earth, both of which are mentioned in this passage, that what has come to them from Him is indeed a certain truth, and on the earth are signs for those of certainty, and in yourselves. Then will you not see. This planet on which we live is a vast exhibition of the signs of God and the marvels of His creation. It is an exhibition from which we have, until now, only glimpsed a small portion of its wonders. Every day we uncover something new, and with each discovery we are exposed to fresh marvels. This exhibition is paralleled by another, hidden within us, the human soul with its secrets, which encompasses the mysteries of the entire universe, not merely the secrets of this earthly planet. These two vast exhibitions are referenced in these brief verses, which open up their doors wide for those who wish to see, for those who seek certainty, and for those who wish to fill their lives with delight, with living lessons, and with the valuable treasure of true knowledge that elevates hearts and extends life's worth. The Quranic texts are designed to work in all environments, under all circumstances, and for all people. They are capable of providing a certain share to every soul, every mind, and every understanding, according to what each is able to comprehend and bear. As human beings advance in knowledge, as their understanding broadens, as their experiences multiply, and as they uncover more of the secrets of the cosmos and the self, their portion from these Quranic texts increases, their share grows, and the provisions they receive from these verses diversify. This is the book about which the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said in his living experience, its marvels never end, and it does not become worn out from being frequently recited. Those who heard the Qur'an for the first time received their share of God's signs in the earth and in the self, according to their knowledge, experiences, and the illumination of their souls. Every generation after them has also found its appropriate share, according to what has been revealed to them of various sciences, knowledge, and experiences. We too receive our portion based on the expansion of our scientific knowledge and the secrets we have uncovered in this vast universe. Future generations will find their share, stored up for them, in signs that have yet to be revealed to us in the earth and within the self. These two divine exhibitions will continue to be filled with wonder and novelty until the end of time. This earth, this planet prepared for life, equipped to nurture it with all its characteristics, is almost unique in what we know of the vast star-filled cosmos with its countless fixed stars and orbiting planets. The known number of these, though only a fraction of the true number, totals in the hundreds of millions of galaxies, each containing hundreds of millions of stars. And planets are merely the satellites of these stars. Yet despite these countless numbers, the Earth seems unique in its readiness to host this form of life and to nurture it. If even one of the Earth's many characteristics were altered, the existence of this form of life would be impossible. If the Earth's size were to change, whether smaller or larger, if its distance from the Sun were altered, whether closer or farther, if the Sun's size or temperature were different, if the Earth's tilt on its axis were changed in one direction or another, if its speed of rotation around itself or the Sun were increased or decreased, if the size or distance of the Moon, its satellite, were altered, if the proportion of water to land on the Earth were changed, whether increased or decreased, if. The list of known and unknown factors that make the Earth suitable for life extends into the thousands. Are not these signs or series of signs displayed in this divine exhibition? Then consider the sustenance stored in the Earth for the living creatures that inhabit it, whether they dwell on its surface, swim in its air, plough through its waters, hide in its caves and caverns, or burrow in its tunnels and depths. These provisions, both simple and complex, are ready and available in countless forms to meet the needs of the innumerable living beings that populate the earth, with their equally countless varieties of food sources. These provisions are embedded in its soil, flowing through its channels, soaring in its atmosphere, sprouting on its surface, and even arriving from the sun and other realms, some known and some unknown. Yet they all flow according to the decree of the wise planner, who created this cradle for life and equipped it with everything necessary to sustain the countless types of living beings that inhabit it. And the variety of scenes and landscapes on this earth, wherever the eye wanders or the footsteps, these wonders never cease. From plains to valleys, mountains to oceans, lakes to rivers, each scene is constantly shaped and reshaped by the hand of ceaseless creativity, which never tires of innovation and transformation. One may pass by a barren place, only to find it transformed into a verdant landscape. The same place viewed in one season presents one scene, and in another season an entirely different one. It is lush and green in one instance, and dry and golden in another. Yet it remains the same place, unmoved by even a foot or arm's length. And then there are the creatures that inhabit this earth, plants and animals, birds and fish, reptiles and insects, not to mention humankind itself. The Qur'an gives special attention to humanity in its own distinct verses. These creatures, whose numbers and species are still not fully known, let alone their individual populations which are impossible to count, each represents a nation of its own. Each individual creature is a marvel, each animal, each bird, each reptile, each insect, each worm and each plant. Indeed, every wing on a butterfly, every leaf on a flower, and every blade of grass in a field is a wonder in this divine exhibition whose marvels never cease. Even if humanity, all of humankind, were to spend their lives contemplating these wonders, merely pointing to the signs within them, they would never reach the end of their words or their reflections. The Quranic text does no more than awaken the human heart to contemplate and reflect, to uncover the wonders in this vast exhibition throughout the journey on this planet. And the enjoyment of this reflection brings joy throughout the journey. Yet only a heart filled with certainty can truly comprehend these wonders and enjoy this journey. And on the earth are signs for those of certainty. It is the touch of certainty that revives the heart, allowing it to see and perceive. It is the touch of certainty that brings life to the scenes of the earth, making them speak to the heart of their hidden secrets, whispering of the planning and creativity behind them. Without this touch, those scenes remain dead, silent, hollow. They speak nothing to the heart, they offer no response. Many pass by the divine exhibition with their eyes and hearts closed, unable to perceive its life, unable to understand its language. And yet among them may be scholars who know only the outer aspect of the life of this world. As for its inner reality, it remains veiled from their hearts. For hearts are not opened to the true nature of existence except with the key of faith, nor do they behold it except by the light of certainty. And God the Most High has spoken the truth. Then there is the other marvel that walks upon this earth, and in yourselves. Then will you not see? This human being is the greatest wonder upon this earth. Yet he often neglects his own value, the secrets hidden within his being, when his heart is deprived of faith, and when he is denied the blessing of certainty. He is a marvel in his physical composition, with the mysteries of his body. He is a marvel in his spiritual composition, with the mysteries of his soul. He is a wonder in both his outward form and his inner essence. He embodies within himself the elements, secrets, and mysteries of this entire universe, and you think you are a small entity, but within you is enfolded the entire universe. Wherever a person turns to contemplate the wonders of his own self, he encounters secrets that amaze and bewilder. Consider the formation and arrangement of his limbs, their functions, and the way they perform those functions, the process of digestion and absorption, the mechanisms of breathing and combustion, the circulation of blood through the heart and veins, the nervous system, its structure, and its management of the body. The glands and their secretions and their relationship to the body's growth, energy and regulation, the perfect coordination of all these systems, their cooperation, and their precise responsiveness. Every one of these marvels contains within it further marvels. In each organ and in every part of each organ lies a miracle that astounds the intellect. And then there are the secrets of the soul, with its known and unknown capacities, its perception of things, the way it perceives, stores and recalls them. How and where are these images and memories stored? How are they summoned and brought forth? This is only the known aspect of these abilities. As for the unknown, it is far greater and more vast. Its effects appear from time to time in flashes of insight and illumination, pointing to what lies beyond the visible, to the unseen and the unknown. And then there are the mysteries of this species in its propagation and inheritance. A single cell carries the entire legacy of the human race's characteristics. It holds within it the traits of the parents and the near ancestors. Where, within that tiny cell, do these traits reside? And how by itself does it find its way through that long historical path, representing it with the utmost precision, and ultimately recreate this wondrous human being once again? Pause for a moment at that instant when the embryo begins its life on earth, separating from its mother, depending upon itself, and giving the heart and lungs their command to begin the rhythm of life. A pause before this moment and before this movement leaves the mind astonished, the intellect bewildered, and the soul overwhelmed by a flood of awe and a flood of faith from which no heart remains unmoved and no consciousness unswayed. And another pause before the moment when the infant's tongue begins to move, uttering those letters, syllables and words, and then forming sentences. Indeed, even before the speech itself, the speech of that tongue, the sounds from that throat, what a marvel it is! A marvel that loses its impact because we witness it so often. But to pause for a reflective moment restores its wonder. It is an astounding miracle that speaks of a power belonging only to God. Every single detail in the life of this creature places us before a wonder among wonders from which amazement never ceases. And in your own selves, will you not then see? Each individual of this species is a world unto themselves, a mirror reflecting the entire existence in a unique form that is never repeated throughout the ages. No one has a counterpart among their fellow human beings, neither in form nor in features, neither in intellect nor in perception, neither in soul nor in emotions, nor in their personal vision of the universe as it appears to their senses and understanding. In this divine museum, which holds millions upon millions of individuals, each person is a unique model, a one-of-a-kind print that is never duplicated. Through each individual, the entire universe passes in a form that is likewise never repeated, just as no two fingerprints on this earth across all eras are identical. Many of the wonders of the human species are visible to the eye, and in your own selves will you not then see? What the eyes behold of these wonders points to the hidden mysteries that remain concealed. These marvels cannot be contained within a book. The known and visible among them would require volumes to detail, while the unknown still exceeds the known. The Qur'an does not enumerate or confine them, but touches the heart with a delicate touch, awakening it to this divine museum, open to both sight and insight. It calls upon the human being to spend their journey on this planet in reflection and contemplation, finding the highest enjoyment in the meditation upon this wondrous creation hidden within their very self, though they remain heedless and distracted from it. Indeed, those moments in which a person spends contemplating the faces, features, movements and habits of creation through the eyes of a devout worshipper wandering in a museum fashioned by the best of creators are truly delightful moments. How much more so, then, for one who spends their entire life savouring this sublime enjoyment. With such a touch, the Qur'an creates a new being, with a new consciousness. It bestows upon them a new life and grants them a joy like no other in all that they could imagine of earthly pleasures. It is on this elevated level of reflection and awareness that the Qur'an wishes to bring people. And it is faith that provides the human heart with this provision, preparing it for this divine enjoyment, even while still on earth, in the realm of clay. After this, the first indication was toward the exhibition of the earth. The second indication was towards the exhibition of the self. Then the surah transitions to a third indication, toward the exhibition of the hidden, elevated realm where sustenance is apportioned and destiny is decreed, and in the heaven is your sustenance and all that you are promised. This is a wondrous indication, for although the visible causes of sustenance are found on earth, where human beings toil and labour, expecting sustenance and provision from it, the Qur'an directs human sight and soul toward the heavens, toward the unseen, toward God. It commands them to look there for their apportioned sustenance and destined provision. As for the earthly means of sustenance, they are signs for those who have certainty, signs that return the heart to God, prompting it to seek sustenance from His bounty and to free itself from the burdens of the earth and the chains of greed from the apparent means of provision. These means should not come between a person and their gaze toward the primary source that created these means in the first place. The believing heart comprehends this indication in its true sense, understands it in its proper context, and realizes that the purpose is not to neglect the earth and its resources, for human beings are tasked with stewardship and cultivation of the earth. Rather, the goal is that they should not attach themselves to the earth, nor become heedless of God while cultivating it. They must work on earth while looking toward the heavens, taking hold of the means while being certain that these means do not provide for them. Rather, their sustenance is decreed in heaven, and what God has promised will surely come to pass. In this way, the heart is liberated from the bondage of the apparent causes of provision on earth, soaring on wings above these causes toward the kingdom of the heavens. For in these causes the heart sees signs that lead it to the creator of the causes, allowing the human being to live with their heart connected to the heavens, while their feet remain firmly planted on the earth. This is how God wants the human being to be. This is how God wants this created being, fashioned from clay and infused with His Spirit, to be, favoured above many of His creations. Faith is the means to achieve this state, in which the human being is at their highest, for it is the state in which they were originally created by God, the nature of God according to which He has created humanity, before corruption and deviation touched it. After these three touches, the earth, the self and the heavens, God, the Exalted, swears by His divine self to the truth of this entire discourse. By the Sustainer of the heaven and the earth, it is indeed the truth, just as certain as your speaking. For they speak, and this is a fact before them, one they do not dispute or doubt, one they do not argue or speculate about. And just as this is a fact, so too is this entire discourse, for God is the most truthful of speakers. Al-Asma'i narrated a curious tale, which Al-Zamakhshari mentioned in Al-Kashaf, and we recount it here for its delightful nature, though we approach it with caution regarding its authenticity. He said, "I left the mosque of Basra, and suddenly an Arab appeared on his camel. He asked me, 'Which tribe are you from?' I replied, 'From the tribe of Asma.' He asked, 'Where have you come from?' I replied, 'From a place where the words of the Most Merciful are recited.' He said, 'Recite to me.' So I recited the Surah Adh-Dhariyat. When I reached the verse, 'And in the heaven is your sustenance and all that you are promised,' he exclaimed, 'Enough!' He stood up, slaughtered his camel, and distributed its meat to everyone who passed by. Then he took his sword and bow, broke them, and left. Later, when I performed the pilgrimage with Harun al-Rashid, I was circumambulating the Kaaba when I heard a faint voice calling my name. I turned, and there was the same Arab, now thin and pale. He greeted me, asked me to recite the surah again, and when I reached the verse, he cried out, 'Indeed, we have found what our Sustainer promised us to be true.' Then he asked, 'Is there anything more?' I recited the verse, 'By the Sustainer of the heaven and the earth, it is indeed the truth, just as certain as your speaking.' He cried out, 'Glory be to God, who has so angered the Majestic One that he had to swear an oath? They did not believe him by his word, so he was forced to swear.' He repeated this 3 times before his soul departed with his words. Whether this story is authentic or not, it reminds us of the majesty of this oath from God the Exalted. Swearing by his very self as the sustainer of the heavens and the earth only magnifies the truth of what is being sworn upon. And this truth is already certain even without the need for an oath. This was the first section of the Surah. The second section contains references to the stories of Ibrahim, Lut, Musa, the people of Ad, the people of Hud, Thamud, the people of Salih, and the people of Nuh. This section is connected to what came before it and to what follows, within the overall context of the surah. Has the story reached you of the honoured guests of Ibrahim, when they entered upon him and said, "Peace"? He answered, "Peace to a people unknown to me." Then he slipped away to his family and brought a fattened calf. And he placed it before them, saying, "Will you not eat?" But when he saw that their hands did not reach for it, he felt apprehension of them. They said, "Fear not," and gave him glad tidings of a learned son. The surah begins with a question. Has the story reached you? Drawing attention to this tale and preparing the mind for it. The guests of Ibrahim are described as honoured, either because they are honoured by God, or as an indication of the honour Ibrahim extended to them, as the story goes on to demonstrate. The generosity, kindness, and willingness of Ibrahim to offer his wealth is evident. No sooner had his guests entered, greeted him with peace, and received his response, though he did not know them, than he hastened to his family, meaning his wife, to prepare food for them. He brought forth an abundant meal, enough for dozens of people, a fattened calf. But there were only 3 guests, according to what is narrated, and a single shoulder from this calf would have sufficed them. He placed it before them and said, "Will you not eat?" He asked this after noticing that their hands did not reach for the food, and they showed no sign of intending to eat. So he felt apprehension of them, either because a guest who does not eat their host's food may indicate ill intent or treachery, or because he sensed something unusual about them. It was then that they revealed their true nature or reassured him, saying, "Fear not," and gave him the glad tidings of a learned son, the news of Ishaq from his barren wife. And his wife approached with a cry, striking her face, and said, "A barren old woman?" She had overheard the glad tidings and was stunned and astonished, letting out a cry, as women do, striking her cheeks with her hands. She exclaimed, "A barren old woman?" expressing her amazement at this news, for she was old and had been barren for her entire life. The unexpectedness of the news overwhelmed her, making her forget that the bearers of this glad tidings were angels. At this point, the messengers reminded her of the original truth, the truth of the power that knows no limits, the power that manages all affairs with wisdom and knowledge. They said, "Thus has your sustainer said. Indeed, he is the wise, the knowing. Everything comes into being when it is commanded. Be. And God has spoken, so what more is there after his word? Familiarity and habit limit human perception and restrict their imagination, so they are amazed when they see something contrary to their accustomed experiences. They wonder how it could be, and may even deny that it could happen. Yet the absolute will of God proceeds on its way, unconstrained by human familiarity, creating what it wills without any limits or restrictions. At that point, Ibrahim began to inquire, having now realized the true nature of his guests, about the mission for which they had been sent. He said, "Then what is your mission, O messengers?" They said, "We have been sent to a criminal people, to send down upon them stones of clay marked by your sustainer for the transgressors." These clay stones, marked or prepared by God for the transgressors, those who exceed the bounds of truth and nature, were destined for the people of Lut. It is not beyond reason that these stones were volcanic rocks hurled from the earth's depths. In this sense they were marked by your sustainer, assigned, according to his will and laws, to those he willed among the transgressors, decreed at a specific time and place in accordance with his eternal knowledge and wisdom. And the angels were entrusted with sending them within the framework of his will and laws. Do we truly know the reality of God's angels? Do we understand their connection to this universe and to everything within it? Do we comprehend the true nature of the cosmic forces that we name with terms based solely on their outward appearances as they are revealed to us from time to time? Why then should we object to God's report that he empowered some of these forces at a particular time, to be sent in a particular form, upon a particular people in a particular land? Why should we object to God's report when all our knowledge is still nothing more than hypotheses, theories, and interpretations of the outward appearances of these forces? As for their true reality, it remains far from our grasp. Whether they were volcanic stones or some other type of stone, they are all in the end in God's hands, his creation, and the secret behind them lies with him, to be revealed when he wills. So, we brought out those who were in it of the believers, and we found not within them except a single house of Muslims. God extracted the believers from the town to save and protect them. The only house of believers was the house of the prophet Lut, as mentioned in other places in the Qur'an, and they were the only ones who were saved, except for his wife, who was among those destroyed. And we left in it a sign for those who fear the painful punishment. For it is those who fear who see the sign, perceive it, and benefit from it. As for others, their hearts are veiled, unable to see the signs of God, neither in the earth nor in themselves, nor in the events of history. Another sign is found in the story of Musa, mentioned briefly in the context of the signs in the history of the messengers, and in Musa, when we sent him to Pharaoh with clear authority. But he turned away with his supporters and said, "A magician or a madman." So we seized him and his soldiers and flung them into the sea while he was blameworthy. The clear authority with which God sent Musa to Pharaoh was the strong evidence, the decisive proof, and the majestic presence bestowed upon him. God was with him, hearing and seeing everything, yet Pharaoh turned away with his strength, arrogantly rejecting the clear truth and the decisive proof, and accused Musa, this prophet who had shown him the miraculous signs of God, of being either a magician or insane. This demonstrates that miraculous signs and wonders do not guide a heart that is not prepared for guidance, nor do they silence a tongue that insists on falsehood and fabrications. The narrative does not dwell on the details of the story here, but quickly moves to its conclusion, where the lasting sign is recorded in history. So we seized him and his soldiers and flung them into the sea while he was blameworthy. He was blameworthy for his tyranny and his denial of the truth. The expression emphasizes God's direct action in seizing Pharaoh and his people and casting them into the sea. This serves to highlight God's sign in Musa in the context of his signs within the earth, the selves, and the history of the messengers and their missions. Another sign is found in the story of Ad. And in Ad, when we sent against them the barren wind, it left nothing that it came upon, but that it turned it to dust. The wind sent against Ad is described as barren because it carried neither water nor life, as they might have expected. Instead, it carried death and destruction, leaving everything it touched like a lifeless body reduced to dust. And the wind is a force among the forces of this universe, a soldier among God's soldiers. And none knows the soldiers of your sustainer but he. He sends it, in accordance with his will and his law, in one of its many forms at the appointed time, upon whomever he wills, as a means of destruction and ruin, or as a means of revival and life. There is no room, in such instances, for the simplistic and shallow objection that the wind blows in accordance with the cosmic system, and that it moves here or there due to natural factors. For the one who governs it according to that system and in accordance with those factors is the same one who directs it upon whom he wills when he wills in accordance with his decree and plan. He is able to command it as he sees fit, within the framework of the system he has laid down and the factors he has ordained. There is no contradiction, no doubt, and no objection. A third sign is in Thamud. And in Thamud, when they were told, "Enjoy yourselves for a while," but they insolently defied the command of their sustainer, and so the thunderbolt overtook them while they were looking on, and they were unable to rise, nor could they defend themselves. The reference in the words, "when they were told, 'Enjoy yourselves for a while,' may point to the 3-day reprieve they were given after they killed the she-camel, as mentioned in the verse. He said, 'Enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 days.' It could also refer to the period of enjoyment that had been allotted to them from the time of the message until they killed the she-camel and rebelled against their sustainers' command, at which point destruction became inevitable. What is said of the stones sent upon the people of Lut and of the wind sent upon Ad can also be said of the thunderbolt sent upon Thamud. All of these are cosmic forces governed by the command of God, subject to his will and his laws. He directs them upon whom he wills, within the framework of those laws, and they fulfill the role he assigns to them, like any of God's soldiers. A fourth sign is in the people of Nuh, and the people of Nuh before them. Indeed, they were a rebellious people. This is a swift allusion that touches upon the story with a single stroke, without further elaboration, as though to say, "And remember the people of Nuh." The word people is in the accusative case, without the preposition in preceding it, implying an ellipsis where the verb remember should be understood. The following verse, "And the sky we have built with might," is conjoined with it, linking this historical sign with a cosmic sign and connecting this section of the surah with the third section. "And the sky we have built with might, and indeed we are expanding it, and the earth we have spread out. How excellent are we as spreaders, and from everything we created pairs so that you might reflect. So flee unto God. Verily, I am a plain warner to you from him, and do not set up any deity alongside God. Verily, I am a plain warner to you from him." This is a return to the cosmic exhibition with which the surah opened, presented here in one of the myriad forms that the Qur'an displays for the hearts to ponder. It continues to point out God's signs here and there, linking the sign of Nuh with the sign of the sky, the sign of the earth and the sign of all creatures. From there it leads to a call that resounds to all of humankind, urging them to flee unto God in pure monotheism and devotion. "And the sky we have built with might, and indeed we are expanding it." The word might refers to power, and nothing speaks more clearly of power than the construction of the vast, harmonious, perfectly balanced sky, by whatever meaning we take the word sky. Whether it refers to the orbits of the stars and planets, or to one of the stellar groups known as galaxies, which contain hundreds of millions of stars, or to a layer of this vast space where stars and planets are scattered, or any other meaning associated with the word sky. The concept of expansion is also apparent. These stars, with their immense sizes and numbering in the millions, are no more than scattered particles in this vast, spacious universe, and perhaps the reference to expansion also alludes to the storehouses of sustenance, which, as mentioned earlier, are in the heavens, even if the heavens here are merely symbolic of what lies with God. Yet, the Quranic expression casts certain shadows that seem intended to evoke particular feelings in the human spirit. Likewise, there is another reference to the earth, spread out and prepared. "And the earth we have spread out, how excellent are we as spreaders." God has prepared this earth to be a cradle for life, as we have mentioned before. The use of the term spread out evokes ease, comfort and care. The earth has been fashioned to be a readily accessible, well-prepared cradle with everything in it precisely measured to facilitate and sustain life. How excellent are we as spreaders! And from everything we created pairs so that you might reflect. This is an astonishing reality, revealing the principle of duality in creation on earth, and perhaps in the entire universe, for the expression does not restrict itself to the earth. The principle of pairs in creation is evident in living beings, but the word thing encompasses non-living entities as well. The expression affirms that all things, like living beings, are created in pairs. When we remember that this verse has been known to humankind for 14 centuries, and that the idea of universal duality, even in living beings, was not known at that time, let alone the notion of duality in everything, the sheer wonder of this early remarkable unveiling of cosmic truths becomes apparent. This verse also leads us to believe that modern scientific research is moving closer to the truth. It is now almost certain that the structure of the entire universe can be traced back to the atom, and that the atom itself consists of a pair of electric charges, positive and negative. Thus it seems that these scientific investigations are indeed on the path to the truth, in light of this astonishing verse. In the midst of these brief yet vast reflections on the heavens, the earth, and the depths of creation, the call is made to humankind to flee unto the Creator of the heavens, the earth, and all creatures, casting off everything that weighs down their souls and binds them, fleeing to the one God, free of all partners. So flee unto God, verily I am a plain warner to you from him, and do not set up any deity alongside God, verily I am a plain warner to you from him. The use of the word flee is truly remarkable. It suggests burdens, chains and shackles that weigh the human soul down to this earth, hindering its ascent, surrounding and imprisoning it, leaving it tethered, especially the chains of sustenance with the preoccupations and anxieties that come with relying on the apparent means of livelihood and the promised portion. Hence, the call comes with force, urging a breakaway, a freeing of oneself, and a flight unto God from all these burdens and chains, a flight to God alone, free from any partner, and a reminder to the people that all excuses have now been cut off and all justifications fallen away. Verily, I am a plain warner to you from him. The repetition of this warning in 2 consecutive verses serves to amplify the alert and heighten the caution. It is as though this allusion to the sign of the sky, the sign of the earth, and the sign of creation serves as a continuation of the signs of the messages and the messengers. When the recounting of the stories of the messengers comes to an end, the surah concludes with this reflection. Thus, no messenger came to those before them, but they said, a magician or a madman, have they passed this down to one another as an inheritance? Nay, they are a people transgressing beyond bounds. So turn away from them, for you are not to blame, but remind, for indeed the reminder benefits the believers. It is one nature, one disposition for all those who deny the truth. It is the same reception that the prophets have always encountered from the transgressors. No messenger came to those before them, but they said, a magician or a madman. Just as these idolaters now say, it is as if they had passed down this reception from generation to generation across the centuries, but in truth they have inherited nothing. It is merely the nature of transgression, of exceeding the bounds of truth and right, that binds together those of the past and those of the present. The natural consequence of this repeated stance, this stance that seems to have been passed down by the transgressors across the ages, is that the messenger, peace be upon him, should pay no heed to the deniers. He is not to be blamed for their misguidance, nor is he falling short in guiding them, so turn away from them, for you are not to blame. His task is merely to remind, and so he must continue to remind, regardless of how many turn away and how many deny. But remind, for indeed the reminder benefits the believers. It will not benefit those who are stubborn deniers. Reminding is the duty of the messengers, while guidance and misguidance are beyond their responsibility, for these are matters in God's hands alone, who created humankind for a purpose known to him. Here, the surah reaches its final cadence, and the meaning of fleeing unto God becomes clear, along with the necessity of casting off the burdens and chains, so that one may fulfill the function for which God created his servants, and for which he granted them existence. And I did not create the jinn and humankind except to worship me. I do not desire from them any provision, nor do I desire that they should feed me. Indeed, God is the provider, the possessor of strength, the unshakable. This short verse contains a profound, immense truth, one of the greatest cosmic truths that human life on earth cannot be properly understood without recognizing and believing in it. Whether it be the life of an individual, a community, or humanity as a whole across all ages and epochs, this truth opens up multiple dimensions and meanings, all of which fall under this grand reality that forms the cornerstone upon which life is built. The first aspect of this truth is that there is a specific purpose for the existence of jinn and humankind, a purpose that is embodied in the function they are meant to fulfill. Whoever performs and fulfills this function has realized the purpose of their existence. Whoever neglects it or turns away from it has nullified the purpose of their existence, rendering their life void of meaning, empty of its essential purpose, from which its primary value is drawn. They will have broken away from the law by which they came into existence, and will have ended up in a state of absolute loss, a state that befalls every being that breaks away from the law of existence, which binds, protects, and preserves it. This specific function that binds both jinn and humankind to the law of existence is the worship of God, or more precisely, servitude to God, that there be a servant and a servant who worships and a sustainer who is worshipped, and that the servant's entire life be built upon this foundation. From this, the other aspect of this immense truth becomes clear, that the meaning of worship must be broader and more comprehensive than merely performing rituals. For jinn and humankind do not spend their entire lives performing rituals, nor does God ask this of them. He assigns them other types of activity that occupy most of their lives. We may not know the activities assigned to the jinn, but we do know the scope of human activity required of us. We know this from the Qur'an, from God's words. And when your sustainer said to the angels, I am placing a vicegerent on earth. Thus, the role of this human creature is the vicegerency on earth. This requires diverse forms of active engagement in the development of the earth, discovering its forces, energies, treasures, and secrets, fulfilling God's will in utilizing and advancing life upon it. The vicegerency also entails upholding God's law on earth, to establish the divine system that aligns with the universal law. It thus becomes clear that the meaning of worship, which is the ultimate purpose of human existence or the primary function of humankind, is certainly broader and more inclusive than merely performing rituals. The role of vicegerency is undoubtedly part of the meaning of worship. The essence of worship, then, is represented in two main aspects. The first is the internalization of the meaning of servitude to God within the soul, which is to firmly establish the awareness that there is a servant and a sustainer, a servant who worships and a sustainer who is worshipped. This is the ultimate truth, beyond which there is nothing else. There is no other reality in existence but this, a worshipper and the one worshipped, a single sustainer, and all are his servants. The second is directing every movement of the heart, every movement of the limbs, and every movement in life toward God alone, purely for his sake, free from any other feeling, and from any meaning other than the meaning of servitude to God. With these two aspects, the true meaning of worship is realized, and work becomes akin to rituals, and rituals become akin to the development of the earth. And the development of the earth becomes like striving in the path of God. And striving in the path of God becomes like patience in adversity and contentment with God's decree. All of it is worship. All of it is the fulfillment of the primary function for which God created jinn and humankind. All of it is submission to the universal law, which is expressed in the servitude of all things to God alone. At that point, the human being lives in this world with the awareness that they are here to fulfill a task assigned to them by God, to which they have been sent for a time in obedience to God and in worship of Him, with no ulterior motive of their own and no goal beyond this, except obedience and the reward they find within themselves of tranquility and satisfaction with their position and work, and of intimacy with God's pleasure and care. And then they will find their reward in the hereafter, in the form of honor, bliss, and great bounty. At that point, they will have truly fled unto God. They will have fled from the burdens and enticements of this earth, from the distractions and allures that hinder them. They will have been truly liberated through this flight, liberated from burdens and chains, and will have devoted themselves to God, settling into the original universal state as a servant of God, created by God for His worship. They will have fulfilled the purpose of their existence. One of the requirements of the internalization of worship is that the human being must fulfill their vicegerency on earth, carrying out its responsibilities and achieving its utmost results, all the while letting go of it, free of attachment to it or its attractions. This is because they did not undertake the vicegerency and achieve its results for their own sake, nor for the sake of the earth itself, but rather to fulfill the meaning of worship within it, and then flee unto God from it. Another requirement is that the value of actions in the soul must be derived from their motivations, not from their results. Let the results be what they will. The human being is not attached to these results. Rather, they are attached to the fulfillment of worship, in the performance of actions and efforts. For their reward lies not in the results, but in the worship they have performed, in the motivation for their actions. Thus, a person's attitude towards their duties, responsibilities, and actions changes completely. They come to see in all of them the hidden meaning of worship. Once they have fulfilled this meaning, their task is complete and their purpose is fulfilled. Let the results be what they may afterward, for those results are not within their responsibility, nor are they within their reckoning. It is not within their control. It is all within God's will and decree, and their effort, intention, and action are but a part of God's will and decree. Once a person has emptied their heart of attachment to the results of their work and effort, and once they feel that they have received their due reward and secured their recompense simply by realizing the meaning of worship in the motivation behind their work and effort, then no trace of greed will remain in their heart, no hunger for the spoils of this life that drives people to rivalry and strife over its fleeting rewards. On the one hand, they will exert their utmost effort and energy in fulfilling the vicegerency and carrying out its responsibilities. On the other hand, they will release their hands and hearts from attachment to the trappings of this world and the fruits of their labor. They will have achieved these fruits for the sake of fulfilling the meaning of worship within them, not to claim them or hoard them for themselves. And the Qur'an nurtures and strengthens this awareness, liberating the human soul from its preoccupation with the burdens of sustenance and from the stinginess of the self. For sustenance, in its very essence, is guaranteed. God, the Exalted, has taken it upon himself to provide for his servants. He does not ask them naturally to feed him, limitless is he in his glory, or to provide for him. When he commands them to spend of their wealth for those in need and to fulfill the rights of the deprived, he reminds them, I do not desire from them any provision, nor do I desire that they should feed me. Indeed, God is the provider, the possessor of strength, the firm. Thus, the believer's motivation for work and exertion in the role of vicegerency is not driven by a desire to amass sustenance. Rather, the true incentive is to realize the meaning of worship, which is fulfilled through the exertion of one's utmost effort and energy. In this way, the heart of the human being becomes attached to the realization of worship in the effort itself, and is freed from attachment to the results of that effort. Noble emotions that arise only under the shade of this lofty understanding. If humanity fails to perceive and savor such emotions, it is because it has not lived, like the first generation of Muslims, under the shelter of this Qur'an, nor has it drawn the principles of its life from this magnificent constitution. When a person ascends to this horizon, the horizon of worship, or rather, the horizon of servitude, and remains steadfast upon it, their soul will inevitably recoil from employing any base means to achieve a noble end, even if that end is the victory of God's cause and the establishment of his word as supreme. For base means, on the one hand, shatter the pure and noble essence of worship, and on the other hand, the believer does not concern themselves with achieving the ultimate ends. Their concern lies in fulfilling their duties, realizing the meaning of worship in the performance of those duties. As for the ends, they are entrusted to God, who brings them to pass in accordance with his will and decree. There is no need to resort to forced or dubious means to attain a goal that is in God's hands and does not fall within the believer's calculations as a servant devoted to God. Then the servant finds peace in their conscience, tranquility in their soul, and serenity in their mind, in all circumstances, whether they witness the fruit of their labour or not, whether it unfolds as they envisioned or contrary to their expectations. For they have completed their task and secured their reward by realizing the meaning of worship, and they find rest in this. Whatever happens after that is beyond the limits of their role. They know they are a servant, and thus do not overstep the bounds of servitude with their aspirations or their demands. They know that God is the sustainer, and thus they do not encroach upon what belongs to the sustainer alone. Their feelings rest at this boundary, content with God, and God is content with them. Thus, certain facets of that immense and awe-inspiring truth contained in one brief verse, "And I did not create the jinn and humankind except to worship me," begin to manifest. It is a truth that, when it truly settles in the heart, is capable of transforming the entire face of life. In the light of this profound truth, those who have wronged themselves by rejecting faith are warned, the very ones who hastened the promise of God and belied it. The surah concludes with this final warning: for those who have wronged themselves, there is a portion like that of their predecessors, so let them not hasten. Woe then to those who disbelieve from the day they are promised.